Last time on the Skip and Josh podcast.
You know how much I hate Bud Selig because when we went to Cooperstown for the Tim Raines induction ceremony, when he went up on stage, I was booing so loudly, I think you were embarrassed to be standing next to me. And I
wasn't embarrassed to be standing next to you. I was actually worried that security was going to come and take you away.
But we were outdoors. Where were they going to take me?
You're listening to the Skip and Josh podcast with Skip Sherman and Josh Obadia.
Okay, Skip, so today is going to be a different episode than we normally do. We're not going to count down any list because we are recording this in the month of March, and because March Madness got underway officially yesterday, we are going to just talk about our March Madness memories. This is not going to be in any order. We're not going to go back and forth. It's just going to be random stream of consciousness, if you can call it that.
I love it. It's exactly what it is.
Okay. And March Madness Memories, you can call it Triple M or 3M. 3M is actually sponsoring this episode.
They don't even know it, but
they don't know it, but they're going to have to send us a check later.
We'll tell them. We'll send them an invoice and see what happens.
Exactly. So, and this is not just, you and I have been to many March Madness events in the past together.
Yeah.
But this is not just that. This is also like, you could have a March Madness memory just sitting at home alone on your couch.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So sometimes on Twitter, like I follow these like podcast accounts. They're general podcasting, or they're trying to get awareness towards independent podcasts like ours. And like sometimes people are like, in one word, what is your podcast about? Or what's your tagline? Like there's questions like this. So a lot of times I say our podcast is about friendship. Don't you think that's true?
Yes, that is. If I had to think of a word, I couldn't, but you just said a good one.
And actually, what people don't know is March Madness is really important in our friendship. It's actually how we became friends, I think.
It's part of it. By the way, I forgot to mention at the top of the show, we're actually in the same room recording.
Yeah.
We haven't done that in 2 years or more.
The last time we recorded together was when we did one at the Orange Julep.
Right.
Which was like summer 2019.
Was it that long ago? Okay.
I think that's when it was.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Right?
So that's another thing that's weird about today's episode, that we're actually in the same room. So normally when I want to interrupt you, it's not that easy. Or when you want to interrupt me, it's not that easy. But now I can just put my hand up and tell you I have to talk.
But actually, I find this recording face-to-face, just a few feet apart, really, really awkward and weird.
It is distracting having you right next to me. It is very distracting.
So all that to say is that like March Madness, it really marks so many parts of our friendship, our lives. Like we became friends because we found out we both liked Duke.
That's right.
When we were like 18 or 19 years old.
That's right.
And we never looked back, right? Like, and then, like you said, we went together to see the March Madness tournament, the first and second round, and then another time the third and fourth round in Syracuse, which is like about 5 hours from here in Montreal.
Right.
So we did that 3 times, and I think you told me you went to Buffalo once also for the tournament.
Right. After I moved to Toronto, the first round was in Buffalo. I think it's in Buffalo this year as well.
Yeah.
And so I went with someone who Mitch Fox.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm in last place in his pool.
There you go.
Like I told you when you walked into my house, my bracket was busted at about half an hour after the tip-off yesterday.
Mitch likes having people in his pool who get eliminated early.
That's me. He must love it.
He must love having you.
I sent him the money. It was like giving him a donation.
Exactly. That's exactly what it was for me too.
So, of all the times that we went to see March Madness in person, we only saw Duke once, right? Unless you saw them in Buffalo.
I didn't see them in Buffalo. We only saw Duke once. In the tournament. Actually, hold on. I think I've seen Duke twice in the tournament.
Yeah.
Once against VCU, I think, when they lost.
Well, the time that I saw them was against Florida, and we lost.
So,
remember we sat like alone in a section, and then they kicked us out.
Yes.
That was against Florida.
Okay, well then I saw them another time without you.
Okay.
Because I saw them lose another time, and
that must have been in Buffalo. No?
It must have been in Buffalo then.
Yeah. It's funny we can't remember anything.
I mean,
although we're going to go back in time and we're going to remember all kinds of weird stuff.
I could look it up, and I once did look it up. But yes, so I've seen them lose twice. So really, I shouldn't go to Duke games because I've seen them get eliminated twice. Now, by the way, I've seen Duke play in a non-March Madness game.
Me too, once.
And they did win that game.
Very good.
So, and that was also in Syracuse.
But I remember seeing the game in Syracuse. It was the third round, I think. And we're playing Florida, who was like, eventually we're going to become national champions. Not that team, but a few years later.
Are you sure it wasn't that year that there was, because they won 2 in a row?
It might have been. But
I think that was the year. That was one of the 2 years that they won.
If it wasn't that year, it was the year after, you know. But like, I remember they had the team with all these guys. It was like a whole team of shooters. And then I remember Billy Donovan was the coach, right?
Yes.
And he called timeout. He yelled at all those guys. We were right in front of him. He yelled at all those guys. All 5 guys went on the bench, and he put 5 new guys in.
All coaches, yeah.
But I remember I came with like my Duke shirt and hat, and like it was so invested. We had a good team. It was like,
didn't we have Chris Carrawell?
We won the national championship, I think, the next year or the year after. It was Chris Carrawell.
That was his senior year.
What's his name? Jason Williams was on the team, but he was a freshman, I think.
Okay.
It was a really good team. Carrawell was the leading scorer that year. We always have a good team. Like we always think we're going to win, but. And I remember just like walking in the arena in Syracuse after the game, and like just like rando people came up to me and are like, "I'm really sorry that you guys lost. Sorry for the loss." Like they were consoling me.
I'm surprised because there's a lot of people that don't like Duke. Yeah,
I know. I was surprised too, but people saw me all decked out and they're like, "Sorry about that." I'm like, "Okay," you know. It was kind of weird. But do you want to like go back in time to like the first trip to Syracuse? That's the most memorable for sure for me.
Yeah, that is the most memorable for me as well because it was the first time.
Yeah.
And we didn't drive that time.
What year was that? 1991, I think, right?
I think that's about right, yes.
Yeah.
So we didn't drive. We purchased, I don't even know if these things happen anymore. It was a trip that you purchase where they give you the tickets to the game, they give you the transportation, and they give you the hotel, and it's all inclusive.
Yeah.
And these used to be very common. Like you could go on a hockey trip, you could go on a baseball trip, a football trip, a basketball trip.
Yeah.
These trips were very common back in the day.
Yeah.
I don't think they do them anymore.
I just remember like somehow, I don't know how we found out about the trip. Do you remember how we found out about it?
I don't. I really don't.
I remember we went.
Couldn't Google it because that didn't exist.
We went to the Holiday Inn, Point Claire, on the Trans-Canada, to some random office, which was like an empty office.
Well, because it was like very early in the morning
but like it was like no one there. It was like an empty space, and then we gave this guy a bunch of money, and he gave us like a little printout of the itinerary.
Yeah.
And that was it.
I thought we had to pay in advance. I didn't realize we paid that day.
Well, that's it. Well, that was in advance though.
No, because that was the day that we left.
No, I'm talking about that. This was before. This was like a week or two before.
Oh, okay.
And then I just remember going
I don't remember at all.
I remember going to your house and you
that
telling your dad that we're going on this trip and that we had paid, and he was so mad.
See, I don't remember that either.
And you showed your dad the itinerary, and he thought like honestly we had just given a bunch of money to like strangers, and that like we were never going to see the money again, and that we were never going to go on this trip, and that was it. Like he thought we got completely scammed, and we may have. Like for all you know, he could have been right. Like we were just these not teenagers. Like, hey, let's go. But then we showed up and we got on the bus, and eventually we went, and everything worked out great. It was an amazing trip.
I don't remember me telling my dad. I don't remember him being mad at
He was so sure. He was so sure that
I don't remember any of that.
He was so sure that the trip did not exist, and we had just paid someone money that we were never going to see again.
See, I don't remember that part. I remember getting on the bus the day we left.
Yeah, the Glow bus.
The Glow bus.
Yeah.
And by the way, so every time I hear a song, like any song, every song reminds me of something.
Can I guess what album you're thinking about?
I know
right now?
you're gonna guess right.
It's World Party.
Yes.
We listened to that cassette like right around that time, right?
Yeah. So every time I hear World Party, I always think about that trip.
Do you remember the teams that were in? It was amazing. First of all, like because it was the first round. The other times that we went to Syracuse, it was the second weekend, I think.
Yeah.
That was the only time we went the first weekend, which was amazing because we saw 4 games the first day.
That was exhausting, by the way.
2, and then we went to the hotel and we came back at night and we had 2 again.
Exhausting.
And then we saw 2 games on the Saturday. Like
I should have brought my ticket stubs with me.
I have them in my office.
Okay.
But do you remember? Like I remember there was North Carolina, Villanova,
yes.
UCLA.
Okay, I thought California was one.
California.
And
EMU,
of course, Eastern Michigan University.
There were other teams, obviously, because there had to have been more than that.
Right.
But those are the teams I remember. Remember, California, UCLA had Don McLean. I don't know if you remember.
I do, and didn't what's his name? The guy who was the best tight end in the NFL,
Tony Gonzalez.
He was playing in that tournament.
He was the power forward for Cal.
There you go.
We figured out after the first session. that because our tickets weren't so great, right?
Okay, yeah.
But we figured out like after the first session, meaning after like the first 2 games, that there was sections for the students of those schools.
Correct.
That were much better seats.
Correct.
And we can just go and get tickets, and like people were gonna be like, "I hear you can have our tickets," because they had extra. Like people came off the bus from Cal, they had a 500 seat section to fill, and they only had 100 people on the bus.
Okay, I don't remember that part.
So I just remember like that's why we sat in the Cal section, because they're like, "Hey, yeah, you can come sit next to us. Here, we have tons of tickets." Like they had extra.
Now I know, obviously, the first day, like it's either Thursday, Saturday, or Friday, Sunday.
I don't remember what it was.
I don't remember either. But what I do remember is, half the teams get eliminated on the first day.
Yeah.
So then the second day, 2 days later,
Yeah.
half the people want to get rid of their tickets because their team is done.
They're done.
They just want to go home.
Right.
So like it's so easy to get tickets for that second game.
That might have been what I'm talking about. Actually, it could have been that.
Yeah.
I just remember like
It's so easy to get tickets for the second game.
Much better seats.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tony Gonzalez. He was the
That's
big power forward.
That's right. I mean, I didn't know who he was.
And they
at
had
the
the
time.
most original cheer, the California.
It was awful.
Do you remember what it was?
Yeah, I do.
Do you want to say it?
California, California, California. Now, but Eastern Michigan University had the best cheer.
Theirs was "Go Emu, go Emu, Emu."
That was the best
I still
one.
remember it very, very well.
That was the best one.
We have pictures with the cheerleaders, the UCLA cheerleaders,
The mascot.
the mascot. I rubbed his fur.
Yeah.
The Villanova and the North Carolina Tar Heel.
Yes, yes.
That was a great trip.
That was a great trip.
That was a great trip. That was Duke's first national championship, but obviously we didn't see Duke in that bracket. But
Right.
that was the first year, the year they beat UNLV in the semifinal, and then Kansas in the.
We also got the official March Madness basketball from Pizza Hut
I
that
had
year.
it for the longest time.
So did I. And the weirdest thing, because, okay, it wasn't a regulation size basketball,
Oh, it was tiny.
but it still bounced.
Yeah.
So now, I think I still have the ball.
Yeah.
It doesn't bounce anymore.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's not like it lost air. It just hardened.
Yeah.
It's like a rock now,
Because it's
which
like-
is weird.
It's probably such lousy rubber. It's not real basketball.
I know, but you would think that it would lose its air.
we need a scientist to explain.
I don't know how it hardened.
I can't tell you.
Anyway.
I couldn't tell you. So those are those were like the best trips. Remember the next time we went was a few years later.
And we didn't take a bus, we drove.
We drove and we saw Louisville. I forget, honestly, I don't remember that trip.
And I think
as
that time we drove back,
And
then
then
drove
drove
back,
back again.
and drove back.
That's
So in
how-
other words, 4 drives.
That's how young we were. That we were like,
because we didn't want to stay in a hotel.
no.
And the thing is, a different person came with us to the second game than who came with us to the first game.
I mean, back then we were in these. We had a lot of like common friends, or I don't want to say common friends, but like a group of friends that was really just about college basketball, because we were in these like pretty high stakes pools. We were in these pretty high stakes bracket challenges, and we did well in them.
Actually, they weren't bracket challenges. It was
No,
a
they were.
completely
It
different
was.
pool.
It was a kind of. Pool.
And I'm glad you mentioned it. So it's a pool where, it's a draft.
Yeah.
So if you pick a team, no one else can have that team.
Right.
And I think there were 8 of us in it.
Yeah.
And we each got, is it 8 teams?
Yeah.
So, and then the thing is, we were partners because we couldn't afford to enter alone. Meanwhile, you think it was high stakes?
It wasn't really.
It wasn't really.
No, because the thing is that pool got more and more high stakes as the years went by.
Exactly.
And eventually I was like, I can't do this anymore.
Well, now it's like at least 10 times, the entry fee is 10 times what it was back then.
I remember at one point I was like, they were like, are you in? I'm like, no.
But that first year, you have to tell the story.
Okay,
or I have to tell the story.
So we had a draft and we had to pick, 8 teams. So I think we had the first pick.
I don't know if we had the first pick, but we did get Duke.
We did get Duke. And Duke was, it was the first pick because they were the consensus number 1, easily.
Okay.
And then on the rebound,
Yeah, which was took forever.
we got Michigan.
Yes.
So that's the year that Duke played Michigan in the final.
I know. And so we had clinched both parts of the pool.
Yeah, well, to explain, like, half the money went to who got the most points.
Yes.
And then half the money went to if you had the champ.
Correct.
So when we got to the championship game, we clinched both halves of the
Before
of
the game
pot.
even happened.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
That was amazing.
And they must have all hated us because it was our first year in the pool.
Yeah. There was another year where we had clinched both halves of the pot. We didn't clinch both halves of the pot. We could have won both halves. The year that Duke lost to Connecticut, 1999.
I remember that year, but I don't remember who we had in the pool.
We had Duke, and we clinched the points, but Duke lost to Connecticut, so we only got the points.
That was very disappointing, that game, because Trajan Langdon didn't even get a shot off at the end.
That's the best. Well, I don't want to say that's the best Duke team that didn't win a championship.
I think it might be,
because there's another really good one, but that team was freaking loaded.
It's unbelievable that they didn't win.
Elton Brand was on that team. I don't know. People think of Elton Brand and you're like, okay, he was a really good NBA
Shane
player.
Battier was on that team, right?
Yeah. But, I mean, Elton Brand was an unstoppable college player. Like,
was Corey Maggette on that team?
Yeah, he was. He was a freshman. He left early.
He was the first Dookie to leave early, by the way.
Well, Brand left early too, but Maggette was the first freshman. Right, Brand had played a couple of years.
All right, so Maggette was the first one and done.
One and done, exactly.
But the funny part is Maggette didn't even start.
No, he was useless in the NBA.
He was the sixth man on our team. He didn't even start, and he left early.
I know. The other Duke team that was really, really good, that didn't win the championship, and I don't even want to talk about it because it's very, very sad memories, was the '94 team. It was after Leitner and Hurley graduated, and that was Grant Hill's team.
Yes.
Grant Hill just carried us to the finals. We were so good. We had Cherokee Park. I forget who we had, but it was Grant Hill's team. It's an extension of the other back-to-back teams, and it was just 2 years later.
Right.
And we lost to Arkansas. I mean,
Scotty Thurman?
Yeah.
The shot that almost hit like one of the banners in the ceiling.
It's sad because basketball is really an unforgiving game because it was literally the last minute of the game. Duke played an incredible defensive possession. Like, we shut them down. We forced them to take a horrible shot. Like you said.
With 1 second left on the shot clock.
Like you said, he took a rainbow three-pointer from the corner that is hit it left the orbit of the earth. Like, it hit the clouds, came down, and somehow went in. And it's really, basketball is cruel, right? Because we played a great defensive possession, and he made a really lucky shot. Or maybe if you're an Arkansas fan, he made the greatest shot in Arkansas history, I guess.
So I remember that, but ask me to tell you anything that I learned in geometry or geography or whatever, no chance.
So if you remember that, where were you when Leitner hit that shot against Kentucky? The most famous shot that everybody knows.
There's the pass to Leitner. Puts it up. Yes!
So it's funny you ask because I was actually at work.
That's what I thought.
I was at work. I was working at the Saint Laurent Arena. And so I wasn't watching the game. I was recording it. And of course, when I set my VCR to record the game, I didn't think it was going to go to overtime or be a long game. Like, what do I know, right?
Right.
So...
But you were always pretty smart. You used to anticipate overtime, and you used to record extra.
That's right, I did. Anyway, I recorded it, and I didn't find out the score of the game because I didn't have a smartphone because they didn't exist.
Yeah.
And I don't even think the internet existed yet.
Yeah.
So I didn't find out the score because it's not like it was the Montreal Canadiens where I would have heard the score.
Yeah.
Although it was a Saturday night, I think.
It was a Saturday night.
So... And you didn't call me to tell me.
No, well, I mean, I didn't call you at work. I never called you at work.
But you could have called me at home, but you didn't do that either.
Well, I knew you were recording, yeah.
So then I only started watching it like at midnight or something.
Yeah.
And as I'm watching it, I'm thinking, this game's going quite long. I hope I set the VCR long enough because I don't want to miss the end of the game.
Yeah.
Anyway, I got it all. And I think I still have the VHS tape of that game.
It's crazy.
So where was I? I was at home in my den at like 2 or 3 in the morning, who knows what time it was, and I couldn't believe it.
I remember it was the first year that I was dating Diane. Like it was a fairly new relation. Well, it wasn't
That's your
that
wife.
new. That's
my
your
wife for the people listening.
My wife now. It was a year, actually. It was exactly probably a year since we met. I'll get to that story in a sec. But I was watching at home, and like my dad didn't know anything about college basketball. Like he was a marginal sports fan, but he knew I liked it, and he knew I had money on it, right? So he used to watch with me, and I remember like we were supposed to go out for dinner, and the game went to overtime, and then I called Diane, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna be late. I'm gonna come as soon as the game's over. We're gonna go, but and then like it was getting longer, and I called her again. I'm like, okay, I'm leaving soon, as soon as the game's over, and then Kentucky hit that shot to take the lead with 1.3 seconds left, and my dad just looked at me. You remember like the layout in our room? He was sitting in that big brown chair in the corner.
I think I vaguely recall.
And
yes.
he just looked at me and he's like, it's just not going to be your year this year. Because he knew we won the year before, our big pool, we won all this money, and Duke won. Like, it was everything, right? Our team won, and we won all this big high-stakes pool.
It's not going to get any better
it's just not, he goes, it's just not going to be your year this year. And then 1.3 seconds later.
2.3.
Or whatever it is, he hit the shot like that every college basketball fan, whether you love Duke, whether you hate Duke, whether you love Leitner, whether you hate Leitner, everybody knows that shot, and you have to respect that play. Like, the pass by Grant Hill, the overhead. And I just read an article. Where was it? Where did I read that? They're saying they practiced that play.
Oh, I'm sure they did. Like, these teams practice all these plays.
Yeah.
But you look back on it now, and...
it was in the Coach K retrospective stuff. And they were talking about how he was always prepared, because the farewells to Coach K, like, in the last month, right? It was in one of those video montages, and someone was saying they practiced that play with Grant Hill throwing the overhead pass.
It's easy to say now because you've seen the play 100 times.
Yeah.
But, like, Kentucky did not defend it properly.
No, they screwed up. And
how do you not put someone in front of Leitner to try to intercept the pass? How do you not do that?
100%. Who was the coach of Kentucky? Pitino then?
I don't remember.
Anyways, whoever the coach from Kentucky was, they're lamenting to this day. They made a huge mistake, the coach, because they didn't guard the ball. They thought, we're going to have an extra guy guarding for the pass, but not guarding the ball gave it's like if you let Tom Brady go in the pocket and you don't put any pass rush.
Listen, you've got 5 defenders.
Right.
They've got 5 offensive players. You should have one guy on one guy.
Yeah.
I'm not a basketball coach, and I know that.
Yeah, they made a big mistake.
Similarly, if you recall, I don't know if it was the year before or the year after, when Leitner hits that shot against UConn.
It was before.
Okay.
It might have been 2 years before.
Right.
I think Leitner was a freshman that year. That was like the Danny Ferry teams.
Right. So if you recall that play, they didn't put anyone on Leitner. He inbounded the ball
and got it back.
And they didn't put anyone on him. Like, a different coach, different team, whatever. But still, like, that to me is, I don't know, basic.
Yeah. So I mentioned that when Leitner hit that shot, it was like 1 year-ish since I met my girlfriend, now wife. So the year before, the Duke-Kansas championship game, now that game's on a Monday.
All championship games are on Mondays.
Now, what happened was back then, we used to play in a ball hockey league, and we had ball hockey every Monday.
Yes.
And being, 20-year-old guys, ball hockey was really important to us.
Yes, it was. So we didn't want to miss our game.
So we did not want to miss our game.
But we also didn't want to miss the Duke game.
But this is before PVRs.
Right.
So I knew we planned that you were going to record the game, but then that meant we could only start watching
when it ended.
When we knew it ended.
Right.
And we couldn't check to see if it ended because we didn't want to find out the score. So we had to really...
we had to wait till like midnight
We had to really
watching.
estimate the time. And we had a normal routine after ball hockey. We would usually go to like a restaurant and hang out. We used to go to Harvey's, right?
Or the Julep.
Yeah. And you didn't want to do that. You're like, no. We're going to find out the score. Like, you were really paranoid about finding out the score.
I was.
I
always am.
So you made a call from the phone, no cell phones back then, from the phone at the office of the Y where we used to play. And you said, you know what, we're going to go to my friend Diane's house, and we're going to hang out there for about an hour and a half. And we're just going to hang out there because that is a safe zone. No one there even knows the game is being played.
That's right.
They don't even know that the game's on, let alone telling us the score.
You telling this story right now makes me realize how smart I am. Because that's a genius idea on my part.
Well, I have to thank you for that.
It's a genius idea on my part. I don't even remember. I mean, I remember it. But how I thought of that in the first place is brilliant.
So we ended up going to Diane's house and we hang out there for an hour and a half.
By the way, the listeners don't know. You'd never met Diane at this point.
No, that was the first time we ever met.
That was the first time you ever met Diane.
First time.
So I call her up. I say, I'm coming over with a friend of mine who you don't know, and we have to hang out at your house until midnight. And of course, she still lives with her family at this point. It's not like she lives alone.
Yeah.
So she lives with her sister and her parents.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we went, and it was fine.
Yeah.
And it was perfect.
Yeah. And then we went, and then we went back to your house and watched the game. Duke won, and that's when.
That's how you met your future wife.
It's like I could tell my kids the story. That's how I met your mother.
Have you told your kids the story?
I'm pretty sure I have. I mean, it was told at our wedding. Obviously, the kids weren't born yet. It was told at our wedding,
Didn't I tell the story?
Probably.
Okay.
And I mean, I think I must have told them this, but I don't know. Maybe not.
Okay.
I don't know. Anyways, yeah, that's like a real How I Met Your Mother situation.
We should do a show. We are doing a show.
So I have more notes. I don't know. Like I had a little bit of outline. By the way, the least amount of work I ever had to do for an episode.
The least amount of work I ever had to do for an episode was our previous episode where I did no work at all. And I did no work at all for this one also.
So we talked about the Leitner shot. We talked about meeting my wife, and then also like some of the other championship teams. Are there any other like non-Duke? Let's get away from Duke. Like, is there any other? Are there some championship games that you remember, or championship teams that you really like that weren't Duke teams? Like,
the only thing I remember, and I don't even remember what year it was. I do these bracket pools every year, and I never win. But there was one year that I actually won the bracket pool. Like I was the guy.
Who was the national
I was the guy running it at my office.
Yeah.
And I won the pool, and everyone thought I was cheating because I was the one running it.
Yeah.
I couldn't even tell you who won that year. It's a long time ago. It's at least 10 years ago.
See, the thing is, since we've been started watching college basketball, which was, let's say, the late 80s, Kentucky won a few times, and North Carolina won a few times. So I blocked those out. I don't know what years North Carolina won, and I don't know what years Kentucky won. I don't want to know, and I just want to forget them. But I wrote down, there were some other teams that I liked. Arizona, the Mike Bibby year.
Miles Simon.
And Miles, that was a fun team to watch.
Yes.
You know, they kind of came, not out of nowhere, but Arizona was always like the perennial underachiever. They had so many great teams and number 1, number 2 seeded teams. And
was Lute Olson the coach?
Yeah, he was. So that was Lute Olson finally getting his championship.
Right.
Same thing with Syracuse. Syracuse had a lot of great teams in the tournament. I mean, it started in the late 80s. I didn't even know you when, like, the Sherman Douglas, Ronnie Cycli.
I remember those guys.
Derek Coleman, like, those are amazing teams, right?
Friend of the show, Costa, is a big Syracuse
Huge,
fan.
right?
Yeah.
And Syracuse had many, many great teams throughout the years.
But they never won.
And, well, they won that one. They
won once.
Eventually they won it. Carmelo Anthony.
Yeah.
Like, I know Carmelo Anthony, you think he's this NBA diva and demanded a trade and whatever, but like that guy was a sick college player.
It's amazing that when you look back now that Syracuse was able to get Carmelo Anthony to go to their school.
Yeah.
Because you have to understand, Syracuse is not exactly a glamorous place to play basketball or do anything for that
it's
matter.
upstate New York. No one wants to go there.
It's freezing. The winters are bad, just like here in Canada.
Yeah.
So like to get someone to agree to go there.
And that was the time when players were going right from high school to the NBA, like Kevin Garnett, Kobe Bryant. There's a whole list of players that never even went to college. Like it could have been Carmelo too, right?
It's true. He was good enough.
That was a fun Syracuse team, and I was cheering for Syracuse because I wanted them to finally get their championship. And there's also, I mean, I have a few teams here that I wrote. UCLA.
With Tyus Edney?
Exactly. Well, it was like the Ed O'Bannon.
The O'Bannon brothers.
The O'Bannon brothers, right?
Yes, yeah. And if not for the O'Bannon brothers, then players would not be getting paid right now for their name, image, and likeness.
Exactly. They're the ones
who started this.
Yeah, they're the ones that like took the NCAA to court basically to say like, hey, we should be allowed to make money.
Yeah.
So that was a fun team. I still remember that Tyus Edney shot. He's going coast to coast. I think it was against Missouri.
One last try for the Bruins of UCLA to get into the Sweet 16. Knocked out last year in the first round by Tulsa. They don't want to lose this one. Edney going the distance. Yes!
Coast to coast for the layup. Like, and think about it. I always tell you this, right? And we're going to see it again. It could be this year. It could be next. And any year, it's always the same thing. Like, there's such a fine line between the championship and not.
Oh, for sure.
Like, everyone's like, UCLA, they were a dominant team that year. They were the best team. They were 1 second away from losing. Duke, the most dominant team of our, like that Duke team, the one that the Leitner shot year, that's the year we beat Michigan in the final. That was the best Duke team we've ever had. They were number one in the top 25 for the entire year.
Were they?
I'm pretty sure. We only lost 1 or 2 games. And we would score 100 points all the time. So, I mean, that Duke team was so dominant, and yet we still needed a miracle shot. A miracle shot.
Well, remember the year that Duke beat Butler? Duke almost lost that game.
Butler. I mean, well, look, that's not a great Duke team.
No, but Duke almost lost.
And it just goes to show you, right? Like sometimes
It's a game of inches.
it's a game of inches. But that was not really a great Duke team at all when you think about all the
other ones.
I mean, we just talked about the 99 and the 94. Like those were super talented teams. Right?
So one of my favorite games, I don't even remember what year it was, when Duke was playing Maryland and Duke was getting killed. Like Duke was down by double digits in the first half of the game.
It was 2001 that year.
And
that was in the Final Four, right?
I don't know when it was. You could be right. And then even at halftime, Duke was down by quite a lot at halftime.
Yeah.
And then in the second half, Duke just went on this rampage.
Well, Mike Dunleavy hit like 600 3-pointers.
In a row.
Yeah,
like a la Reggie Miller.
Like he just, everything he shot went in.
Yeah.
And then we won, and then we ended up winning the championship. That's the Shane Battier, Dunleavy, Jason Williams, a bit older than from the year that I described. Yeah, those are great teams.
It's all a blur to me.
But the thing is, those teams are so good because all those players played for 4 years.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
That's why I didn't pick Duke this year to win.
This is the first time you haven't picked Duke. You told me you always pick Duke.
It's the first time I didn't.
I often don't pick them.
But I really think that they're not going to make it. They're going to come up against a team, whether it be Texas Tech or whether it be Tennessee or whoever they're going to play.
Even Cal State Fullerton, they might lose
Cal State Fullerton, the 2 versus 15, 116.
Well, a 15-1 yesterday.
The talent gap is usually far enough apart that the better seed usually wins. But I've said this on our podcast for 5 years. There's such a huge difference between all those Duke guys who are first year players. They're how old are they? 19 or 20? Right?
I don't even think they're 20.
Whatever.
Yeah.
And they're going to go play against guys who are 23 and 24 years old, right?
Yeah.
Or whatever. Like sometimes it's physically men versus boys.
For sure.
Right? I mean, Paolo Banchero has a man's body, but it's not the same, right? You get pushed around. You have players with 4 years of experience in college. They know how to play basketball.
So I remember you and I were talking on the phone about a week ago, and you mentioned how Duke lost in the first round to Lehigh, remember?
Yeah, well, that was C.J. McCollum.
That's right. The other time that Duke lost in the first round was against Mercer.
Those bastards.
So it can happen. Like Duke can lose in the first round.
I was in shock yesterday when Kentucky lost.
I didn't see any of the game. I just saw the score.
I mean, that's how it goes. This year of all the years,
there's no really one dominant team.
There's no dominant team. Although watching Gonzaga yesterday, I do think they are still the best team.
But even they lost 3 games this year.
Absolutely.
So
it's just they're hard to match up with. They have physically big players. Like physically big.
There's a Canadian guy on Gonzaga.
Yeah.
Nebhart.
He's really good.
Actually, there's a few Canadian guys in March.
Yeah, there's a guy in Arizona. What's his name? Benedict?
That's right.
Is his first name?
I think your son knows him.
My son's friend played like pretty high-level basketball in Montreal all as a kid growing up. And he's played against that guy Benedict and also Luguentz Dort, who's in the NBA now.
Yeah.
They've played in the same leagues, which is pretty cool.
Nice.
Yeah. There's quite a bit of Canadian content in the March Madness this year, so it's more exciting than ever. I think that's all I have on my notes. Oh, no, I have the most important thing. The most important thing.
You already said the most important thing.
Can you talk about one shining moment?
That is the most important thing. So before we get to that, we'll end with that. I do have one other thing before we get to that.
Yeah.
So I did go, as I mentioned, to some March Madness games without you when I lived in Toronto. I still live in Toronto now, when they were being played in Buffalo. And one of the teams I saw was Davidson. And one of the players I saw was Steph Curry.
Yeah.
I had no clue who he was.
No.
But I saw him play.
When he was in college, like, obviously, I mean, when you see Steph Curry now in the NBA and he's the best player or one of the best top 5 players in the league, best shooter maybe in history, and I'm a Larry Bird fan, so if I'm telling you Steph Curry's the best shooter in history, it means something. Like, that guy was nothing. He went to Davidson. Like, he didn't get recruited by anybody. You know?
He wasn't big.
No,
he's still
not big.
Yeah.
But he went pretty far in the tournament with Davidson that year. They won a few games.
Well, they won the game I saw them play.
Yeah, I mean, like, when your guy can shoot threes from half court, what are you going to do?
That was the beginning of how basketball changed.
Yeah.
Because now, you used to always see like big guys getting drafted high in the draft and early in the draft. Now big guys are like, whatever, they're a dime a dozen.
Well, the game changed a lot now. The game has changed over time, college and pro. And it's mostly because the kids watch the pros play Now the game is threes and dunks. It's like a video game.
Yeah.
Like when I watched my son, and I used to play too, some NBA 2K on PlayStation, dunks and threes. You don't take 2-point shots. Who takes mid-range?
Well, I said this to you years ago. Like,
Yeah.
if you're going to take a 2-point shot, you might as well be right under the basket.
Yeah.
And if you're not right under the basket, you might as well be behind the 3-point line.
There is stats that show, like, the number of 3-point attempts in the NBA every year is going up. Like, they break the record year after year after year. The record keeps getting broken, right? And the college players coming up now, it's the same thing, right? Like, I mean, and the 3-point line's even a little bit closer, right?
It's closer?
Well, closer than the NBA. I'm seeing the
Oh,
college
yes, but-
3-point line is closer than
But
the
they've
NBA line.
moved the college
They
3-point
have.
line further back
It's
recently.
still a little bit shorter.
It is
but-
shorter than the NBA, but it's further than it
Yeah.
used to be.
But it's the college game is still so much about threes, right? It's
For
still
sure, for
although the college game is a much more pure game, right? Because in the NBA, every player on the floor, I mean, I don't want to say every player because there's guys that can't shoot, whatever.
Right.
But the vast majority of NBA players can hit, like, if they can just walk like 18 feet away from the basket and they can hit 20 shots in a row.
If they're unguarded, for
You know,
sure.
like
Yeah.
they can all hit their shots, right?
If there's no one in the gym.
Yeah. So like they're very accurate shooters, right? Like college is not like that. College guys put up shots. It's like
You never know.
cross your fingers and hope it goes in, you know? And they really, when you watch college basketball, they really work for their shots. NBA is like, isolate this guy, 4 guys go in the corner, 1 guy gets isolated on 1 guy, and they're playing one-on-1 with everybody standing around, you know?
I think it's easier to defend in college because the 3-point line is a little closer.
It's more compressed.
So
the spacing's not there.
all your defenders
Yeah.
are closer to the 3-point line. Whereas in the NBA, if you're under the basket, you're nowhere near the 3-point line.
But they work really hard for their shots in college.
Yes.
In NBA, it's like bing, 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 you know, you make a few dribble moves, you put up a shot, that's your possession, you know? They work freaking hard in college. There's screens and guys running around, and like, it's really like the coaching is so important. Coaching in the NBA is just about like, can you motivate your guys and can they not hate you? You know?
I'm itching to talk about One Shining Moment now. We have to move to that.
Okay, let's go.
So One Shining Moment is my favorite part of the whole tournament.
Right.
Oh, it's obviously better when Duke wins because then
Yeah.
you get to see Duke highlights in the montage.
Yeah.
And as you know, before PVRs,
Yeah.
I used to lead the league in recording things on my VCR.
As we have found out in
Yes,
this
I
episode.
record games, and I would record One Shining Moment every year.
Yeah.
And at one point, I had one VHS tape that had all the One Shining Moments, I think, for 10 consecutive
still
years.
have it?
I must have the tape somewhere, although who knows where it is.
I recorded the One Shining Moment the last time Duke won, you know, with Tyus Jones
Yes,
and that year
on your PVR.
on my PVR, but like I don't have that PVR anymore.
Right.
So when I got a new PVR, like
That was gone.
it was gone. Well, I
Yes.
mean, but the thing is, you can look it up and watch it anytime you want on YouTube.
Exactly. Now
Right.
you can do that.
Although the ones from the late 80s and early 90s, you can't get them all on YouTube. They're not all readily available, and some of them some of them are VCR quality, like your cassette is
Right.
on YouTube. You know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I used to love recording it, and I would watch it over and over again. Now, keep in mind, they have a different singer who sings it now, who I don't like. It was written by David Barrett, and it used to be sung by David Barrett, and that is, in my opinion, the only version worth listening to.
I agree.
I don't like any of the new versions from any of the other new singers.
At one point, they had like Teddy Pendergrass or something. Like,
That's right, he was one of them.
That wasn't very good.
And then there was a female singer
That wasn't good.
whose name escapes
But
me.
I thought they went back to Barrett. Like in the
I
last
don't
few
think
years,
they
no?
did. I don't know.
The ball is tipped. There you are. You're running for your life. You're a shooting star.
The original version is definitely
The original
best.
version
And my
is
favorite One Shining Moment is like those two first years, the Leitner Hurley years. Those are the
Exactly.
two best
Yes,
ones. Like
yes.
I know we're biased and maybe like we're just maybe I asked you like. I said before, one word to describe the podcast, and I say friendship.
Mm-hmm.
The other word is nostalgia,
That's good too.
right? Because often we're pining for like the old days, and Like, obviously, those first two Duke teams mean a lot to us. You know, those first two Duke championships, I should say. You know.
You know, it's funny, when I was a kid and adults used to say things used to be better in the old days, I used to laugh.
Yeah.
Now I'm an adult and I say things used to be better in the old days.
I think, well,
Like baseball sucks now. It used to be so much better. Like, there's a million things.
baseball. We could do a whole other episode about baseball.
We're not going to get into that. But, you know, there's a lot of things that used to be so much better.
Yeah, no, for sure. I agree with that.
The Skip and Josh podcast is available wherever you listen to podcasts. If you listen to the show through Apple Podcasts, please leave a review. To interact with the show, send an email to skipandjoshshow@gmail.com. Follow the show on Twitter and go to Facebook to like the show page. And now for some final thoughts from the guys.
Yeah. So normally at this part in the show, we talk about, you know, random stuff that's like caught our eye and whatever. But we decided to, we didn't really have anything prepared. Or maybe you did. I didn't really, but. So we're going to do the mailbag at the end.
Yes, because we didn't do it at the beginning.
We didn't do it at the beginning.
Mailbag.
So.
And people like hearing their names read on
They
the air.
They do. So my Uncle Lenny called me.
He called you?
Yeah.
Who calls anyone anymore?
He
Like your phone actually rang?
Yeah.
And you answered it?
He called me to tell me that he really liked our Sports Scumbags episode.
Awesome. That was my idea.
And he says there's one guy that he wants to punch in the face.
Who's that?
Michel Bergeron.
Okay.
Ex-Nordiques coach.
I know very well.
Yeah. Our good friend Jesse out in Texas from this Set Lusting Bruce Springsteen podcast, because I mentioned Skip Bayless in my episode.
Before you tell me who Jesse wants to punch in the face,
Yeah.
It's got to be somebody with the Washington football team or the Philadelphia football team.
No, it's more Dallas related.
Okay.
But because he's in Dallas, right? And I mentioned I hate Skip Bayless. Skip Bayless is a Dallas guy, right?
Okay.
So he really dislikes Skip Bayless. He liked that pick, and he wholeheartedly agreed with your Scott Boras.
Beautiful.
Not endorsement, but your pick
The
of Scott
opposite of
Boras.
endorsement.
He said Scott Boras and Skip Bayless should be on everyone's list.
Yes.
He also said Jerry Jones because, you know,
But I'm surprised because he is a Cowboys fan.
I know, but he says, as we say here in Dallas, it's time for Jerry Jones, the owner, to fire Jerry Jones, the general manager.
Well, that's never going to happen.
Exactly. Our friend Derek from down the street about our 80s.
You're going back a few episodes.
Because, you know, sometimes people don't listen, you know, they catch up on the shows. So
it's called the podcast delay.
Is that what it's called?
I don't know.
He said about the best albums of the 80s. He mentioned U2, Peter Gabriel, INXS, and Crowded House. Wow, the soundtrack of the 80s. He liked all our picks. And he was impressed with all your Australian picks, wondering if you were considering Olivia Newton-John.
I should have.
And, you know, our good buddy Dan out in North Carolina.
Yes, Dan wrote in again.
Yeah. He said top 3 for him, albums of the 80s, Thriller, Joshua Tree, and NXS's Listen Like Thieves.
Oh, interesting.
So, I mean, I know you mentioned Kick.
I did.
Listen Like Thieves was before, right?
Right, exactly.
He says it really does have to do with your age, time and place, and emotional connection, and where these albums took us. And he says for him, Listen Like Thieves is his favorite NXS album and always has a special place in his heart. Our friend Jeff out here in Dollard, he also loved our Sports Scumbags episode. Mm-hmm. And he said Luria and Samson should have been ranked number 1 to 7. No need to speak about anybody else.
I considered doing that.
And then Derek texted me again about the Sports Scumbags because now he caught up to that. And he said, what about Jack Todd?
He's not a scumbag.
Well, I'll tell you. Well, so it's just for people to know, Jack Todd is a columnist in the Montreal Gazette. He is a scumbag. He blocked us on Twitter.
He blocked us?
Yeah, me.
Why?
Well, he blocks everybody. As soon as you disagree with Jack Todd, you're blocked.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. What did we disagree with?
I can't even remember.
Okay.
But it's like I'm one of thousands of people that he's blocked.
Okay. Well.
Yeah. And that's the mailbag.
All right. Great mailbag.
Yeah.
Great episode.
We're gonna go order some food, and we're gonna watch some March Madness.
Perfect.
This is like
perfect episode for a perfect day.
Yeah.
These 2 days, yesterday and today, are the 2 best days of the year.
Oh, absolutely. The Thursday and the Friday.
No, not just for sports. I think they're just the 2 best days of the year.
Of the whole year.
Because even if you do have a job,
Yeah.
you don't do any work after 12.
Don't look at me. I mean, you texted me like, what time can I come over? I'm like, come over anytime. All right. I don't know what the next topic's going to be, but we'll figure something out.
We will figure something out.
We won't be here in person, but we'll go back to our Montreal-Toronto setup.
Regularly scheduled program.
Yeah. Talk to you then.
Have a great week.